Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I think we shall begin with our bridging course today. So our main teacher today is Brother Ibrahim al-Matari. So most of you already know him. And we have our brothers and sisters who mostly have gone through the assessment and have reached here. And there's going to be a few new people here who did not give the assessment and they wanted to join the bridging course. So I also asked them to join. I'll take, as you guys continue, I'll take the roll calls and put you guys present so I know how many people are in the program with us, inshallah. And if I have any questions, I'll ask privately in the chat about your emails so I can update that as well. So I will give now the house to Brother Ibrahim and he can continue from here, inshallah. Brother Ibrahim.
يلا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم. So Jazakallah khair for putting in the effort and turning up. It's mashallah been a really interesting program. Obviously, alhamdulillah, the role of this course, as we see, is to make things as easy as possible when it comes to your ijaza program and actually reciting to the hands of the sheikh. So the way, for me personally, I don't see it as much as a bridging program as so much as an extension of what's already there. So it's not, we don't really see the course as mutually exclusive from the Ijaza program. You will be taught the same stuff that goes into the Ijaza program. And it's more of a foundational basis. And the reason why I say foundational basis is basically it's the foundations is going to really make your life easier when it comes to reciting the Ijaza. I've given this example in previous lectures, but just to make things a bit easy for you, when you're sitting down and you're reciting off by heart to a sheikh non-stop, best example I can relate to is yesterday. I've had to sit down and do 18 pages with a sheikh. Like, I don't know about you specifically, but personally, I've been sweating. You're sitting down, you're bouncing backwards and forwards, you're stopping, you're repeating. So it is a physically demanding exercise, both mentally and physically. So the best thing you can do for yourself, at least, is get grounded in the basics. So it saves you a lot of stress when it comes to actually reading. So you can focus more on recitation and less about thinking about recitation. Just a quick example, to give you an example of what it's like to recite under Sheikh Hamid. Imagine reciting as somebody who's been a hafiz for a few decades, got certified, mashallah, both in India and overseas in Saudi Arabia. And this guy's already hafiz, and he's in his office on invitation basis and sitting down, head directly looking at the mushaf on a 90-degree angle with no distractions. So you can imagine the level of tension that's between the sheikh and the student, and the level of focus, because at the end of the day, when you're actually reciting under somebody with a legitimate sanad, the level of attention that has to be paid is extremely critical. What we're trying to do is provide a simulated experience of that, obviously not as intense, but we're trying to make it as easy and accommodating of everybody, so we're all on the same level when it comes to talking about specific definitions, and that's the main aim of this bridging course. So just before we start, inshallah, this is a nice summary crash course thing we haven't found on the internet. Before we get the ball rolling, does anybody have any specific questions about, let's just say, the course, or maybe the content structure, or generally what goes or happens in an ijaza? So I'm just opening the floor to everybody right now if you have any questions before we get the ball rolling.
Brother, I think I gave them a small introduction to what the program is about, but I think there will be most of us who actually have no idea what's going to happen. So if you want to
Yes.
give a very short overview of the program that you have in mind, that'll be helpful for many people as well, I think. Inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. So basically, just to give a brief recap, the crash course program is basically a very small crash, literally, that's what it is. It's a crash course of the basic ahkam that you're going to come across reciting any part of the mushaf. So these should be a basic toolbox in your, this basic set of tools in your toolbox, basically. So if the sheikh happens to stop you, ask you, for example, explain to me what you did here. Or for example, you made a mistake here when it comes to the mad. You need to understand what the word mad means, let alone, the type of what type of mad it is, let alone what the word actually means when it comes to mad. So these are basically day-to-day ahkam, or you could say definitions. They get passed on through and through from the Qur'an community between the sheikh and the student, and vice versa. And these definitions are universal, and regardless of where you go around the world, all the Qur'an refer to them. So it's our main aim is to focus on these definitions and what the basics of ahkam mean. Once we start focusing on that for everyone's recitation to see where they're at and just refine, rebuff the basics, we start moving on to the more advanced stuff. So as you can see in this picture here, you've got different things. You've got the mad, the ghunna, iqlab, ilhar, the stopping. And then I personally refer to those as the basics, which we'll cover on the crash course. And on the right-hand side, all the stuff in the green, I personally think of it as advanced stuff. Now, it sounds a bit crazy. Uh, when you look at it, the kha and the ha, people are saying, oh, but we only know say differentiate between kha and ha. That isn't the problem. That's you're already here, mashallah, because you can recite. But we're focusing on refining the makharij. That is reserved to as more of a advanced skill. So our main aim for today and onwards is to refine the basics, make sure that everyone knows the definitions. That way we at least know what I'm talking about when I'm explaining things in class. And we'll slowly start introducing the makharij, depending on how much you can take without overburdening you. So yeah, that's basically a brief summary.
That's perfect. So I think we can begin, inshallah. Thank you so much, Jazakallah.
Ya Allah, Bismillah.
Just
So I'll start from
just
the
sorry,
left-hand side.
something I think you
Don't
requested.
stress. Yeah.
Sorry, just to request
Yeah.
everyone to have paper pencil with you in hand so that you can write down the rules that Ustad Ibrahim will give us, inshallah. Thank you so much, Jazakallah.
Yeah. If you need time, go and grab them, because at the end of the day, this is not just from Sheikh Hamid. Every single sheikh that you're going to go to is going to ask you about these things. So it's like I said earlier in the last lecture, this is a university degree program that gets offered when you're doing qira'at and other places, especially when you're studying mutun and stuff. There is an actual textbook course. So I don't really expect people to go through the textbooks. We've already sent these in by email. But if you can at least keep notes to yourself, that's going to make it really easy when it comes to understanding. Ya Allah, Bismillah. You reckon we should start, bro?
Yes, I think if anyone has anything to say, or if he wants a few minutes to grab paper, pencil, please say now. Otherwise, we'll begin. Jazakallah khair. Yep, I think we are good to go. Thank you.
Ya Allah, Bismillah. So inshallah, we'll start with the top left-hand side. So I'm not going to go too much in the details. Please be aware that we tried our best with this poster to be accommodating with different rasm or the types of scripts, be it the one that's used by the subcontinent mushaf or the ones, I call them the greenbacks, the typical ones you find from Saudi Arabia. So a few technicalities, don't stress about how they exactly look a bit much, at least if you understand what's going on. Obviously, roll ahead with it. Otherwise, if you have specific questions, let us know. So the first one is Adhar. So Adhar in Arabic means to show or to clearly express something. So here there are specific letters that you have, and there are 6 letters that have to be part of Adhar. So when we look at them, and I'll go over them, it's from the right to left. Hamza ha, Ain ha, and Ghain ha. So just a question to everybody I'm giving out in the open. Why are these specifically referred to as Adhar letters?
Do you want a response?
Yeah, just a response. Anything. Could it be, I mean, why are they Adhar? What's their characteristic? What makes them unique?
that they are pronounced clearly without any really modification because of the letter preceding it?
Yeah, so that's how exactly how it is. So you have to express them out in the open, and reason being is that mechanically, we refer to that subgroup as the throat letters. So it's the throat. Obviously, there's different levels to the throat when it comes to articulation. The throat letters, they use a separate part when it comes to pronunciation. So in order to keep them preserved, mashallah, as you said and you expressed, is that they have to be expressed out independently from other letters. They don't merge or combine with other letters. So that's why they're called the hard letters. They basically stand alone letters. That's pretty good actually. Jazakallah khair for the answer. Any more how do I say this? Best example, let me think of an example off the top of my head. Simple example, I'm looking now at Surah Al-Ma'idah because we've got the page open. You got Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. You keep hearing this quite a lot in the Mus'haf. So, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. I'm stopping here, I'm specifically looking at the word amanu. What's the hukum between alladhina amanu based on al-har? Oh, sorry, I actually said the answer. Love it. So it's alladhina and amanu. You don't merge it, you don't flip it upside down as doing the club. You have to say alladhina amanu. That's a classic example. It's pretty obvious, but it'll make sense later on when you have more practice. So that's Ibhar in a nutshell, really briefly. Any more questions about Ibhar?
Nothing, I guess. Thank you.
No, Jazakallah khair. Okay, that's Ibhar in a nutshell. We jump to Idgham. Now, Idgham again, Idgham, any person would be kind enough to explain what Idgham refers to? What does Idgham mean in Arabic?
Merge.
Yes, exactly. So it's this is a bit of a trick question. Why would you want to merge some letters? Because this Idgham, you got ones that have to be said out loud, and then you got other letters that merge with each other. Why would you want to merge the letters together?
Is it because the Prophet ﷺ recited it that way?
Yes, so the Prophet, how he recited it this way, but when you think about the broader context, the 7 styles of recitation are actually accommodating of the styles of what the people used to recite at the time. So I'm not saying there was less than or more than 7 recitations. There was obviously 7 famous ones, but you'll hear this. I'll refer to it quite a lot when it comes to Tajweed. When we refer to it as how the Arabs used to say. So at that specific time, specifically, I can say for an example, it's easier linguistically, and we're talking about linguistic mechanics now, to say may yaqulu. Now, when they spoke to each other, it flowed naturally in the tongue that way. So rather than saying man yaqulu in their speak at that time, it was easier to merge it that way as well. So yes, it was revealed this way, and it was, as we say, بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. It was revealed at the tongue of the people at that time, and that's how they're able to pick it up. So an example of that I can give you right now is, can somebody give me an example of another word that's basically eased? I mean, forget about Idgham for now. Like, this is a really technical term now. We're not going to get too much into it. But what's another word? Like I gave you an example. مَن يَقُولُ is easier to say than مَن يَقُولُ because they come from really close articulation points. So it doesn't make sense to try to split them up again. You just merge them together. It's not like Ibhar where you got something, Idgham, you've got the letter at the front of the mouth and then the letter at the back of the throat. So can anybody think of an example of a word that we actually call it concatenations? What's another word that you can think of that's concatenated in the Quran? So that's easy to see, easy to say. So it's been made easier to say. Any volunteers?
Tanweer.
Tanweer. Oh, good shot. Not Tanweer. Okay, I'll give you an example from the same example I used. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
من يشاء.
May yasha, that's really good because that specifically relates to Idgham. I was relating because like we said, we say may yaqulu because Idgham is the hukum that refers to merging the letters together to make them easier. There is another independent one that you can refer to, is you'll find this in Hafs recitation. There's a'jami wa arabi. There's something like tasheel, basically. Sometimes you might hear it say a'jami. So when you hear it, it doesn't sound like much of a difference. But Arabs also have another habit. If there's two hamzas next to each other, for easing of pronunciation, they'll actually take one and drop the other. We'll get to that later, inshallah, that exact same hukum. But you'll find a lot of this in the Quran. So idgham is the most common example of merging letters together because these letters are really close when it comes to articulation. That's the first point. And secondly, it's more natural that way for the recitation. And some letters, as you can see in the poster, they merge better than others. So that's why you see the ra and the lam are separate from ya, noon, mim, and waw. So the letters of idgham are referred to as yarmaloon. You can make your own letters up in terms of joining them. One key question. So I'm going to open the floor again. What's actually ghunna? Because you're going to see this quite a lot. What does ghunna actually mean? Because we keep saying that we're going to use this quite a lot. We got the word ghunna, idgham with ghunna, idgham without ghunna. What does ghunna actually stand for? Is it a letter or is it a characteristic?
Is it the usage of the nasal passage to pronounce it?
Yes, exactly. That's the one. So here we're referring to the nasal passage because the sifat of these letters, they require the nasal passage. So like noon, for example, try saying, you could do this as exercise on your own, say na, or go, and then, just say it now. Just say it. Noon. Give it a shot. Sorry, I seem to have shocked everybody.
No, I think we are all trying without the mic on, so otherwise we all.
I see. No, exactly. Okay. See, the first example is noon, and then I want you now to say the same thing, but hold your nose and go noon. Does anybody see a difference?
It's hard to pronounce it like that.
Yes, exactly. The reason why, if it's hard to pronounce like that, it's because, as mashallah our brother mentioned earlier, is that these were, when it says idgham with ghunna or without ghunna, it means ghunna refers to the actual exercise of using a nasal sound. So, for example, mashallah, as a sister pointed out earlier, we had may yaqul, to pronounce it correctly, I would have thought it's 9. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ. So here, what we're doing when it says Ibrahim with Ghunna, you're using the nasal passage. You're not saying مَنْ يَقُولُ. You're saying مَنْ يَقُولُ with a slight nasal emphasis. The letters with the ra and the lam, you say is no Ghunna. So how does that get pronounced? You get rid of the nasal sound. So you'll say, for example, مِن لَدُنْهُ or مِن رَبِّكَ. So with these ones, it's straight merging. You don't need a nasal sound. You don't need to exercise the nose. You jump straight from the previous letter and the current ra or the lam. So that's a summary of Ibrahim. These are the merging letters, and then you got the letters with the nasal sounds and the ones without the nasal sounds. Any questions?
Quite clear. Thank you.
So just a heads up, Idgham happens usually after a noon sakin or a tanween. So if you have a noon sakin or a tanween and any of these ones comes up, as we'll demonstrate later, you merge straight away. So that's the trick. Bismillah. Next one, iqlab. Any volunteers for iqlab? Anyone would like to guess what iqlab is? Or what does qalaba mean in Arabic?
Like turnover kind of thing. Completely
Yes.
180 degree.
Yeah. Turnover. Yeah. Sorry, what was that, bro? I was just cutting out a bit. Brother, sorry, there?
Yes, I'm there. I'm just saying, yeah, turnover like complete 180 degrees rotation or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Iqlab, literally, like flipping an omelette. That's what it is. So here you're saying change the noon sakin or tanween into a meme sakin. So a typical example off the top of my head I can say is you got min and ba'd. Because the articulation points are pretty close, the noon and the meme, as you can see, they're very, very close. There's subtle difference, but they're very close. So rather than saying min ba'd, you'll merge them together and you'll say mim ba'd. So the reason technically it's referred to as the iqlab is because you perform a qalb or a flip from the noon to the meme straight away. So you say, rather saying min ba'd is technically an izhar. Izhar is the first one you covered, the first hukum that we covered. So you don't make izhar. You don't say min ba'd. It's a noon sakin, and sorry, it has the ba. Sorry, there's a ba. So you say mim ba'd. Sorry, my bad. I'll make it easier. You'll say it as mim ba'd. Now I'm opening the floor to everybody. What's usually the sign? What's the biggest sign for an iqlab other than a noon sakin flipping? Is there in the mushaf? Is there usually some drawings or something that make it a bit easier?
It's like a small meme.
Perfect. Jazakallah khair. So that's usually the biggest hint. So there'll be a meme usually in between to tell you, look, this one, now you flip the letter. Whatever you do not confuse this with, if you can show them, brother Asra, the beam with the compulsory stop on the right hand side in the yellow column. If you can point your cursor to that one. So I'm just saying, don't confuse the compulsory stop with the meme to the meme of, oh, sorry, not this meme. If you go to where stopping is on the right-hand side and go up, the first one on the top. First one. So go up to, yes, perfect. Don't confuse this meme with the other meme. The other meme that we're talking about has a bit of a tail that goes down a bit more. this is a tiny as meme, and that's a different hukum. That means stop at that position. So, Bismillah. Where are we? That's iqlab. Any questions about iqlab?
I have one question. I think when I did a bit of Tajweed with a Malaysian sheikh in Malaysia, he mentioned that when you're pronouncing this meme, you don't close your lips completely, or just gently, softly close your lips. Is that something that we have to be mindful, or just anything about that?
Oh, subhanallah. Subhanallah, that's a really interesting technicality you pointed out there. Subhanallah. I was waiting for somebody to talk about that. Oh, Muhammad. Anybody else understand what Brother Asar is talking about, or is this you hearing this for the first time?
Yeah, I understand that because yeah, I'm from Malaysia, so that's what we are taught. So
Yes.
yeah.
So mashallah, it's interesting if what you're saying, mashallah, the place of origin, mashallah, really matters in this case because there's actually I'll explain the reason behind it. So mashallah, we got two brothers. Anybody else that understands the thing about not closing the lips when it comes to a club? It's not a problem if you don't, because I'm going to explain that in detail, inshallah.
Actually, I don't understand because I'm trying to say it with the lips open, but it doesn't work.
Subhanallah. It's actually a really valid point that you said. That's really interesting. Okay, I'll demonstrate in a second, inshallah. Any more volunteers, or jump into it straight away? I'm guessing this is it. Ya Allah. Bismillah. Okay. Oh, Muhammad. Okay, I'll explain what actually happened here. So there are some schools of thought in the Qur'an community that say pronounce the iqlab. I'm not just referring to iqlab here. This thing is actually it's a major issue because it covers the fat as well. This is not covered as part of basic curriculum, but I'll have to explain this so at least you can figure out your style of pronunciation for the rest of the course, so it makes it a bit easier. Sheikh Amr also is aware of this. We've had a few discussions. So there is a school of thought that says close your lips fully when pronouncing an iqlab or ikhfa, and some of them saying keep a very tiny as, let's just say, gap, for explanation's sake, for letting the air go through. So for demonstration, I'll use this example, min ba'd. So we'll say first style with the lips closed, and I'll try to come closer. Mim ba'd. That's number one. I'll say it again. Mim ba'd. So that's with lips fully closed. Another style, this is relating to our style as well. It's not any other thing. Some people say mim ba'd. Does that make sense to some people?
Yes, understood. Yeah, very clear.
Yeah, I'll go around. Everybody's understands where I'm coming from. We're all on the same page.
Can you just repeat it one more time, please? Thank you.
So you say it first style with the lips closed. Mim ba'd. The other one with the lips open, it's mim ba'd. Mim ba'd.
I feel like the second one sounds like ikhfa, not iqlab.
Exactly. That's why I'm going to get the ikhfa.
Yeah.
The reason why I had to mention this with the club, because it actually started off with ikhfa, and then it crossed over with the club because of the meme and the. But I'm not trying to confuse you too much with it. But I will get to that inshallah soon. I know exactly where you're coming from. So, but do I make myself clear with having a slightly open mouth when you're pronouncing the hukum? Can everybody understand what I mean about hearing the difference?
I think I understand that there are variations or two different two different rules that can be confused with. So I think as we progress with the other hukam as well, it will become more clear for me.
Yes, I'll give a full explanation to what I just did. The reason why I had to give two ways of pronouncing it is so at least you know what it sounds like with the lips open and the lips closed, because it's going to make sense when I explain it in ikhfa. So I'm going to get to the technicality of it. I usually don't discuss this in the crash course because it's an advanced concept in my opinion. But I think we have to get this laid out early on so you can choose what style you want to read when you're moving on forward. So inshallah, that's basically with the club. I pronounce it basically with lips closed. It's easier that way. But let's get to ikhfa. So iqlab, hukman, I personally pronounce iqlab with the lips closed because I believe that you're actually flipping the letter head on. Because the opposite, the next hukum is ikhfa. And anybody care to explain to me what ikhfa means in Arabic? Just a straight up translation.
Just to hide something.
Exactly, yes. So subhanAllah, it was a really good point that you picked up, sister, because when we pronounce you said it sounds like ikhfa. The reason why I personally choose to close the lips, because we don't want to mix your iqlab with ikhfa. Iqlab means to flip one letter's characteristics from one letter to another fully. There is no transition phase. Ikhfa is the one where you're actually taking one letter, and I'm trying to visually show it with my hand. You're hiding it into a bag as if you're trying to hide it into something else. So you're hiding one letter into another. So anybody care to explain what ikhfa means? Any guesses?
Something like you dull down the sound of it.
Yes, you dull the sound of it, but how do you dull it? Does it go down? Does it go up?
Like
Does
a
it disappear?
like gunna kind of thing.
Yes, that's actually a good guess. Yeah, that actually is the one way of putting it. Any other guesses? Oh yes, definitely to conceal it. So when you're concealing something, I'll give you this example. Let's just say you've got a bag and you've got, let's just say, I don't know, 10 cans of tuna, for example. They're huge cans. You can conceal as many cans as you can in the bag, but sooner or later, if you're going to fill your bag up with something, you can see a bulge. So technically, in my personal, really brief explanation of what ikhfa is supposed to be, it's kind of like merging two letters, but you can't fully merge them like idgham. Idgham naturally merges together. These letters, mashallah, are created to merge together seamlessly. It's a transition, they merge. With ikhfa, the innate characteristics of each letter are so different that you put them together, you try to hide them into each other, but because they're so, let's just say, strong and prominent, they both still come out. So that's why we can't refer to it as idgham. You actually take one letter and hide it into the other one, but they preserve their core characteristics. With idgham flows smoothly like water. But the ikhfa, it doesn't. That's why, mashallah, brother Asghar said that you get this sort of semi-ghunna sound that comes up. Just to give you an example, what I'm talking about, so you can relate to it. From Surah Al-Ma'idah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقتلوا الصيد. I'm referring to the word antum. You don't read it as antum. You got a noon second, all right? They pronounce it as antum. So there is this two-letter nasal sounding sound between the noon and the ta in antum. You don't say antum, that's subhar. There's a noon sakin, and the noon sakin there, it merges into, well, not merges, sorry, it gets hidden with the ta. So you pronounce it as antum hurum. So that's how it comes out. So basically, that's what ikhfa is. It's kind of like, ikhfa is that two mads sound that's semi-nasal that comes from between the noon and the ta. Any questions about ikhfa so far? Before I get into that serious explanation.
All good here. Thank you.
So I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So you said antum, right? So in antum, the noon where the tongue is, right? The tongue is touching behind the teeth. Is there a gap between the tongue and the palate?
Yeah, so with this one, normally when you pronounce the noon, mashallah, you flick the tongue, mashallah, as you really beautifully explained. It hits the hard palate in the front that is just behind the teeth. So you say nah. Nah doesn't use the front part of the teeth. So that the part you're referring to is the hard palate at the front of the top jaw. With the kha, what you're doing is you're concealing that because you're trying to hide two into each other. So rather than saying antum, izhar means you need to let it out fully. So what you do in this case, you'll say it as antum. But because of hukum al-ikhfa, you're trying to kind of preserve that or hide it into the next one. It's kind of like you're prepping this letter for jumping onto as a jumping stage for the next letter. So that's why you wouldn't hit the hard palate. You'll say antum. So
Right.
if you say it to yourself, you'll say and rather than letting your tongue hit that hard palate just before it touches, you'll go straight into ta. Antum.
Right.
So that's why we refer to it as ikhfa. You're hiding part of that characteristic.
Understood.
No, jazakallah khair. It was a really good point, mashallah, you pointed out. It was really nice and spotted as well. Any further questions about ikhfa? Everybody still awake?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep, alhamdulillah, that's good. We're getting there, alhamdulillah. Alrighty. Now going back to what was mentioned earlier about ikhfa. This is I'm really referring to it technically now. It's a technical term. It's not shown in the poster. There is what we refer to as ikhfa shafawi here. You've got a meme sakin. So you say, I'll use alayhim biwakil. So what's happening? I'll say it again. Alayhim biwakil. Last letter is a meme. First letter of the second word is ba. So when you pronounce it with the lips closed, again, this is going back to what we said in the club. You pronounce it as alayhim biwakil. I'll say it again. So you say alayhim biwakil. That's with the lips closed. And then you might have heard some mashayikh. Sometimes you hear the likes of, you might hear Sheikh Ali Hudayfi say it. Sometimes Hamad Ayub. Sometimes you'll find the best example we might find is Sheikh al-Samad. They'll say, alayhim biwakil. Alayhim biwakil. Okay, just a question. Can anybody hear the difference? Is it loud and clear, the difference between the first technique and the second technique?
Yeah, I think in the second technique, the lips are open slightly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Somebody else was speaking on the line?
I was just saying that, yeah, the first one sounds like more like a izhar thing, and the second one more like an ikhfa thing.
Okay. Yes, you said ikhfa. So why is it an ikhfa then?
The second one
Tricky
sounds like
question.
ikhfa.
Could you please repeat it?
You'll say, I'll give you an example, the ones that are referred to as ikhfa, Shafi. So you say with the lips closed, alayhim biwakil. And then the second one that the brothers were referring to is alayhim biwakil. So the brothers were saying the second one sounds more like ikhfa. So why are we calling it ikhfa? Why are you trying to hide?
The meme is being hidden. It sounds like.
Already. Any more volunteers or questions about why this thing might be confusing? Because some people say I hear this quite a lot. This one is probably the biggest, in my personal opinion, the biggest debated thing on the ikhfa hukum.
Or you mean
Any
it's,
volunteers?
or you mean it's more like iqlab?
Well, you see where this is getting confusing now. So I said initially with the club, I'll say them straight up. I'll say min ba'd, I'll say min ba'd. I'll say it, or the way I'll read it in the mushaf, it'll have a noon sakin. I'll go min, noon sakina. There'll be a little meme. I flip straight into the meme, the noon sakin. I'll say min ba'd. And that's how I normally say a club, for example. Ikhfa, now specifically with the ikhfa shafawi, this is a case where you get a meme followed by a ba. You might hear people saying, oh, leave the lips quite open. I personally studied under both schools. Sheikh Amr, well, at the time when I studied, and I specifically referred to at the time when I studied under him, he said keep the lips open. The Sheikh I'm currently with was referring to saying keep the lips closed and keep it as ikhfa. So if there's a meme sakin and aba, just say alayhim biwakil, because you don't want to confuse the students with what is ikhfa and iqlab. Just close the lips for all of them. Anybody know where the origins of alayhim biwakil came from? Anybody would like to take a guess?
إدغام ميم ساكن.
Idgham meme sakin. Yes, that could be one way of looking at it. So it's like, it sounds like an idgham. That's actually really nicely spotted. So it's, some people said if we're, if we keep the lips, if we close the lips, it sounds like a flab. If we keep it like this, it sounds like a ibhar. The reason, and this is where it refers to, mashallah, why people are referred to ask people where are your mashayikh, where they came from. So this is not the final verdict. This is specifically for me and how I normally teach it. Bear in mind, other mashayikh might have their own ways of doing this. Some they'll say close the lips, some will say open the lips. When it comes to iqlab, the previous hukum, min ba'd, I'll say mim ba'd. When it comes to ikhfa, like I said, antum, for example, these things, when it comes to noon sakin and any other letter, yeah, sure, I'll make it sound like there's a nasal sound, but specifically when it comes to meme shafawi, alayhim biwakil, for 20 years, I read with the lips closed, or lips open. But I've happened to change my opinion with the lips closed because there was an investigation by, mashallah, Sheikh, he's actually a well-known Qari, Dr. Ayman Swed. He traced back the sanad and the lineage of that style of recitation. And basically what he's done, he's concluded that it was a famous Egyptian Qari that made their own ijtihad and had authority in Egypt at the time of Ida'at al-Quran al-Kareem, that started reading this way, and other people started copying that style of recitation. And that style of recitation started actually getting validated back in the 60s to 70s, I think, based on the ijtihad of the Sheikh. Now, this is an open question to everybody else on the panel. What is the hukum of having your own ijtihad when it comes to recitation of the Quran? Is ijtihad allowed in Qur'an? Actually, what does ijtihad mean?
I think ijtihad means making your own judgment.
Yes, making your own judgment. Yes. So that's basically it. So this sheikh made their own ijtihad, and they said it sounds more like an ikhfa if I read it with the lips open. Because mashallah, as a few students pointed out here, it made more sense to them to So it made more sense to them to recite that way. The question is, what is the hukum on ijtihad when it comes to actually reciting, making your own style of recitation? Can you make ijtihad when it comes to qira'at? I'll probably try to get as many. I wanna get 2 or 3 opinions before we move on. Actually,
It doesn't sound right in a way because it was taught in a specific way by Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So it doesn't seem right that people can make their own way. I don't know. This is what I feel like.
Okay, sure.
In my opinion, probably it would be okay because not everyone can pronounce it the same way. Like different continents have different type of pronunciation of their words, and that will affect their reading as well. That's my opinion.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
I think if it doesn't change the meaning, it could be, there could be a space for ijtihad, but if it changed the meaning, or it might not be okay.
Okay, so if it doesn't change meaning, make it easier. Not a problem. Anybody else want? We'll keep going. Anybody else would like to add? We've been through everybody else yet. It's good to have it as an open discussion. It makes it less boring, I find.
I'm gonna say I don't have the knowledge about it, but I'm just gonna say from what I think is that I kind of side with Asrar with what he said, because because language is evolution, and if we keep on changing slightly based on our own judgments, then in the end we will have something else. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure if what I'm saying is
very
right.
interesting point. Oh, good. No, subhanAllah. That's a very interesting point. Okay, that's actually really good. I guess, alhamdulillah, we got a brief summary of everyone's opinion here. So is it fair now to say we've got 2 camps? Some of them are saying it's okay to make ijtihad in qira'ah, and others are saying it's not okay to make ijtihad. Does that sound like I got it correctly?
Yes, that sounds correct.
All good. So, Muhammad, say Bismillah. Muhammad. Okay. So here is my humble suggestion of finding on this matter. When you look at qira'at is a specifically really unique, you could say, it is referred to as its own standalone independent ilm. When a person finishes qira'at, or at least one qira'ah, like you guys, mashallah, are doing in this course, technically become a mini alim, so to speak. So what happens once you receive your ijaza, you have the license to teach. Now, specifically because qira'at is such a unique specialization, what makes it, subhanAllah, unique from everything else, and you hear this from other mashayikh as well, is that it refers directly to the text and its nature. And that's why it's given extreme weighting. It's not seen as lesser of any of the other arts. MashaAllah, everything goes back to it. When it comes to ahkam, we all refer to the Qur'an, and even the styles of recitation affect the tafsirs. That's why, MashaAllah, in Tafsir Tabari, that you won't find him covering one style of recitation. He'll cover every single style where he can to show you every single manifestation of the word. So, MashaAllah, we've established qira'at is its own profession in its own right. However, when it comes to ijaza, to receive the ijaza and to get it from the sanad, you have to pronounce every single letter as it came from Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it was recited at the time of the Sahaba. So in order to preserve the style of recitation and not have it change over time, even though it might not change the meaning in certain cases, and I'll get back to the changing of the meaning things later, we refrain, and this is an advice I give humbly to all the Qur'an and the Muqri'een as well, to refrain from making your own ijtihad when it comes to the ahkam and how they make sense. For example, I'll repeat myself. When it comes to recitations of Quran, we refrain from making our own ijtihad in these specific technical matters. I'll explain why. Part of the three conditions when it comes to receiving a sanad or any type of ijazah is for it to be valid, you have to be recited under a sheikh that has a legitimate isnad. We say mutasalsil. What it means mutasalsil, it has to be no missing links to the chain. This person taught this person during all their lifetime, and it has to go back to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So the person A has to have a legitimate sanad. B, it has to be in the conditions of how the mushaf. Oh, sorry. The most obvious one, as mashallah was pointed out earlier, as I heard from here, it cannot conflict with any Arabic meaning whatsoever. So, for example, if it's a letter, if it doesn't sound Arab in any way, it gets rejected. Even if it sounds Arab, but it's not being recited by a professional person with a sanad, that's still rejected. So it has to make perfect sense in Arabic, and it has to come from somebody with a proper isnad in a silsila. And the third condition, it has to match the drawings of the mushaf. Despite these three things, the reason why this style of recitation went through the gaps, in my personal opinion, is that it happened to meet all three criteria, but the person decided to make their own ijtihad anyway, because it fulfilled these criteria. But technically, when you look at it, the person that received the style of recitation, they changed their recitation based on their own opinion. So they received it from a talaqi one way, and they pronounced it another one. So as you can see, a really big criteria when it comes to ijaza, even if I mentioned ahkam to you, if you know what iqla, ikhfa, everything else is, one thing you have to completely surrender yourself to is you say it as the sheikh said it, and that's how you learn it. So basically, I hope that clarifies everything when it comes to that one, is that there are certain matters, however, that don't relate to the actual recitation, but relate in teaching the style of recitation, that people have made their own ijtihad or madhab with those two. That's a more of an advanced feature. For example, ulama deferred, they had disagreed on, say, maybe the number of articulation points. For example, Imam al-Jazari said, مخارج الحروف 17 in his method. He says 17 ways, areas of pronouncing the letter. Other mashayikh, other mashallah nahwiyin, they said, no, there is less, there's 16. So in my opinion, that is valid, because at the end of the day, technically, that is far away from the qira'ah as possible. Still contributes to the qira'ah, but doesn't contaminate it in any way. A difference in opinion can be accommodated. However, when it comes to something really specific as pronunciation, it has to be said as exactly as it is. That's basically it. Do I make myself clear on this one, or anybody overburdened? Have I created more questions than normal? I'll leave this as open discussion.
So thank you so much. It was very much clear. I just wanted to write down for my own notes about the three conditions that has to be met for ijtihad in Tajweed. What were the three conditions that you mentioned? If you can.
It's not ijtihad. This is the criteria for any talib ilm or person studying Tajweed. They have to fulfill these criteria. So their qira'ah has to come from somebody with a complete isnad and a silsila. That's why, it's when when they have the actual proper certificates, not certificates, they're actually documentation, like Sheikh Abba and somebody attends over, so it basically says, like, this Sheikh studied under this Sheikh, under this Sheikh, under this Sheikh, and this Sahaba goes to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's the first criteria to guarantee you pronouncing the right style of recitation. Second thing, it has to not change the ma'ani. And the third thing, it has to be completely legible to an Arab person. And the third thing, it has to actually, sorry, I forgot to mention this. It has to mention the Rasm al-Uthmani. It has to be exactly in accordance with the Uthmani script as it was written by Khalifa Uthman. It has to match the style that you recite, both verbally, it has to physically match what's being recited. It has to match it either exactly or nearly. Did I just confuse you now? Feel free to put your hands up, because I think I did.
It sounds okay to me. Yeah.
I know there is at least one or two people that should be saying, what the heck?
The only thing that is in my mind, the question is that if the first part of the condition where it says there should be an isnad for the sheikh, so if
Yes.
there was an isnad for that particular thing that he's doing ijtihad on, if there was an isnad for it already, why did he need ijtihad now?
Exactly. That's the thing. If you already have it, it's not, you don't need to make your own opinion. This is not like fiqh, where fiqh, as you know, there's got different, you can have qiyas on maybe ijma' on certain issues. This is not up for discussion. This is Qur'an. This is sacred text. So when it comes to maybe teaching it or explaining it, you can make maybe your own ijtihad or whatever judgment as a teacher. But if you've received something, you have to transmit it exactly as you got. So, mashallah, you gave a really good example. Why should you make your own ijtihad, technically, when you've received it that way?
So based on
You
this,
get what I mean?
yes. So based on this, you mean the ijtihad that sheikh made, has it been reversed and or revoked, or it still continues? And does the other sheikh refute it?
Well, the thing is, if you've received it from a sheikh and you made your own ijtihad, you're not reading as the sheikh is saying, then technically you've deviated. Am I correct?
Yes.
I'll give you an example. You might see this on YouTube quite a lot. I'm not picking on anybody, but please don't, get sidetracked by this. You might see somebody saying, فإن الله كان بعباده بصيرا. فإن الله كان بعباده بصيرا. Another person, they'll study under that sheikh, and then over time they change the way they do things and whatever, and then they get really good, mashallah, having a beautiful voice, and they say, إن الله كان بعباده بصيرا. What's wrong with this one? Did anybody notice the difference, by the way?
I think he extended the basira in the end.
Yeah, but first sheikh said basira, second person said basira. What's the difference? He extended it. What's the hukum in extending it? Anybody care to join it?
Doesn't sound right. I don't know.
SubhanAllah.
The harakat?
I really value your opinion. Keep going. Yeah, mashallah. Keep going. It's all good.
Nothing. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't sound right to me. That's it.
Okay, that is still a valid point. I'll get back to you in a second, inshallah. Anybody else? What's the difference between both of them? You heard it the same way, you pronounced it the same way, the makharis came out right. One's
He's
longer than the other.
he's stretching the second one, but not stretching the first one.
Yes. But this, inshallah, I'll come back to what inshallah I said earlier. The person in the second one that stretched it, they made their own ijtihad. So what they did, they extended it slightly. Now, mashallah, it might sound a bit more beautifying, but I've caught a few sheikhs doing this at the end of the day. And the thing is, they've made their own ijtihad, not on the ahkam. What I'm teaching is concrete stuff. We don't deviate from this. This is what gets taught in by any qur'an, Ibrahim, whatnot. This person here, they extended more than normal. So what they did, because they wanted to beautify their voice, effectively, they took their own ijtihad under no authority of the sheikh that gave them the ijazah, and they decided to extend it because it sounds more beautiful, because mashallah gives more for sure to people. But what you've done effectively is that you've deviated from the norm. Now, subhanAllah, I heard the words, it didn't sound right, but we couldn't explain it naturally. Can you please get back and elaborate on that point? Why doesn't it feel right?
I don't know. It just doesn't sound right.
Now, if I'm correct, I'm just going to make it clear to the brothers and sisters out there in the chat. You've got, mashallah, Arabic background. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I said as part of our conditions, it has to match the Uthmani Mus'haf. It has to be, obviously, from somebody that's a qualified sheikh. And it has to make sense. Now, subhanAllah, what you said, it doesn't feel right, is technically 100% correct from a technical aspect, because as we know, the alif and the huruf al-mad, alif, waw, ya, the letters, the reason why it doesn't feel right is it needs to have the mad tabi'i. In Arabic, we refer to the mad tabi'i as natural mad. And because it wasn't pronounced naturally, it was extended artificially, it felt unnatural. That's why, subhanAllah, you can pick any Arab person, whether they have Tajweed or not, and they can tell you something doesn't feel right. Now, subhanAllah, if an average person can pick this, whether they're a student or a person that has ijaza, then technically something doesn't feel right. And subhanAllah, as we know, Qur'an has to feel right because it's the guidance. So that's why, you could say it didn't feel right. And that is 100% valid technical answer. I take that as 100%. So it goes back to the first point that we said, you can make your own ijtihad, but when it comes to actually receiving something that's part of the sanad, don't change from what's already been given to you. The Quran's been given as amana, transmitted as it's supposed to be transmitted. In saying that, don't get me wrong, there can be mistakes being done. Sometimes you can pronounce a mistake for 10, 20 years not knowing. Allah doesn't hold you accountable unless you're actually genuinely seeking ilm. But if you're doing this intentionally, and I see this a lot, not because of people, mashallah, talab al-ilm such as yourself, they're actually trying to get proper knowledge, but people that actually go and they actually make a living off it on YouTube, and mashallah end up getting a lot of followers, and then people say the guy's got a beautiful voice, and mashallah, sometimes, man, they'll even, there's a joke, mashallah, by Dr. Ayman Swed. There was a qari standing one day, he was reciting the Quran, and then, mashallah, he's twisting it so it sounds really good to the people, and they're saying, mashallah, listen to this qari reciting, man, I want to be like this guy when I grow up. And the guy stops the salah, looks around, and says, hey, by the way, I'm fasting. I'm like, come on, man. You can't, bend it for the, it was revealed this way for a reason by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Say, this is this. Okay, that's enough about ijtihad and the conditions of receiving it. Any questions on this matter? Any feedback?
So where the discussion actually started, were the meme that you pronounced and the rules behind it. So what was the final conclusion to that?
Yeah, the final conclusion I've reached, I'm not going to overburden you because mashallah, so this is a crash course, like I said, but this was a technical debate between the ulama. I've sat down and I've done this, it was actually an investigation by a sheikh where he went all the way from Syria, all the way to Egypt and across the whole of Egypt, from the desert to, you could say, the cities, to find the origins of this style of recitation, and he managed to pinpoint it to one sheikh. And the rule of our style of recitation, the qira'ah has to be mutawatira. The sanad, it's not just a sanad that has to come, it has to be a sanad that's famous. So if one person makes the ijtihad versus 100 or 200 people, then you go with the majority. So mashallah, because this guy has the experience to pinpoint the sheikhs of the sheikh, he said, because this came from one person, I'm going to disregard it. So I'm of the group of the camp, as you can say, that say close the lips at all times. And it's easier, I find, that way. You'll say alayhim biwakil. I did used to read both ways, but the way I'm going to teach you is going to be with the closed lips. So it's sorry for getting sidetracked, but mashallah, because we've got a really good technical audience, I thought I'd get this clarified out from early on.
No, thank you so much. Just a reminder that there'll be about 55 minutes left for the session, just in case people have other commitments as well. So thank you so much, Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah. Just actually, I'd like to ask a question. Anybody would like to take a breather break of some sort, just to take things easy? Wash up, go to the bathroom, do whatever. Everyone all good?
Yep, all good over here.
I'm all right.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, Bismillah. Let's look at this quickly. Idgham shafawi, ikhfa shafawi, izhar shafawi. I'm just going to disregard this because we've already covered this previously about closing the lips and opening the lips. I think this is just an explanation of what we just covered earlier. It'll come easier with example. Some things will be better demonstrated by example. Shams letters and the sun letters, I won't cover too much in detail, but I'll go over it briefly. Anybody care to explain what's the difference between the sun and the moon letters for those of us that are completely new to this?
I think that is very easy. I think it's regarding the silencing the lam for some letters and
Yes.
not silent. Yeah.
Exactly. So how would you pronounce a moon letter and a sun letter? Can you think of 2 examples?
I mean, if you look at the Ash-Shams and Al-Qamar, so Ash-Shams
Yes.
you use the lam, and Al-Qamar you say the lam.
Okay. So inshallah, I'm going to teach a shortcut here because we all like shortcuts. How can you differentiate between a lam qamariya and lam shamsiya, as we call it? The sun, how would you know the difference between ash-shams or al-qamar? Because one you're actually putting a stress on the shadda, and the other one you're not.
Actually, for me, I've thought about it because my kids asked me the same question when I was explaining to them. Because we have been reciting Quran since we were young, although we don't know the Arabic, but it has become a habit. And for me, I can actually know which one is Shamsi letter and which one is Qamari letter without knowing what the rule is. Yeah.
So it's really good that you mentioned habits, mashallah. No, mashallah. Anybody would like to add to that?
Dear brother, is it the Shamsiya are more towards the front of the mouth, like using, and the Qamariya are more towards the back?
Close enough, yeah. It's like, I'll explain the back one in a second, because when you're doing the shadda also always comes to the front. Am I correct? Yeah, I see what you mean. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah. Anybody else would like to add?
I feel it's always more natural. It just naturally comes. I try to make sure that how it feels like. So it just feels like, yeah, like us or al-sa. So I feel like that it just becomes more naturally, comes as a shamsi, something like that.
Okay, mashallah. It's really interesting. We've got the natural, obviously people are saying it's pronounced naturally. I'll have to admit, I can't do it naturally. But technically, this one really gets into technicality. It says these letters have to have a shamsiya on them. For me, the way I'm teaching it, because it's a crash course, I'm not really too stressed out about teaching you the letters of the shamsiya. My biggest emphasis is knowing that you know the big stuff like huruf al-idgham, al-iqlab, al-ikhfa. When it comes to lam shamsiya, qamariya, the biggest shortcut I tell people is, look, when you got an alif lam, every single time, look at the third thing that comes at the back. If it's a shadda, like in the case of a shams, as you can see in that thing, you pronounce it as ash-shams. You don't say al-shams. If you look at the other example, al-qamar, there is no shadda. It's a straight up sukoon on the lam. You have to say al-qamar. That's why it feels like it's slightly more to the back of the throat. So the biggest hint, if you ever see alif lam, which is so many times happens in the Quran, which means the in Arabic, every time you see alif lam, don't stress about the letters. I'm not going to test you. Look for a shadda. If it's a shadda, you say alladhina, ash-shams. If it's al-qamar or doesn't have a shadda, you say al-qamar. No emphasis. Any questions? All good?
Yes.
Yep.
Inshallah. Perfect. Okay, we'll go up inshallah. Yeah, go ahead.
Brother, is that the only thing to know? Because this sun letters and the other one is new to me. I haven't learned this before.
Perfect.
But I understand what you said. I just want to make sure that I've grasped everything that I need to know about these rules.
Yeah, so it's the sun letters. I think they specifically put it out for emphasis. Obviously, in the past, there weren't any ahkam of the Tajweed. So, mashallah, Sahaba read the things naturally. Because some cultures, they know they have these things. Al-Qamar, Al-Shams. This is really technical. It shows you the letters. But what I tell people as a shortcut when you're reciting from the book, which you'll be doing inshallah, if you ever meet a alif lam, rather than trying to go panicking, going, "Oh my God, which letter is coming up again?" Just look for the one immediately after. If you say al and you see a shadda specifically, I tell people look for the shadda, don't look for the letter. It's easier that way. If you see a shadda straight after alif lam, then say ash-shams, alladhina, an-nas. If you don't see a shadda, you'll say al-qamar, al-mu'minun. Does that make it a bit easier?
Yeah, I mean, naturally I know it, but I think what helps is that there won't be a fatha, khasra, dhamma on that letter. So I know that I have to skip.
Yes. So normally you'd either see a sukoon for lam qamariya, because the thing is, I don't look at the sun letters, the moon letters. In Arabic, when I got taught at school, we look for the lam, the second letter straight away. If there's a shadda or there's sukoon. If there's a sukoon, you say al-qamar, al-mu'minun. If there's a shadda, like in the shams, you'll say ash-shams. I don't stress too much on the letters. As long, like I said, if you can pronounce it to me correctly, this is a crash course, and I like to teach as many shortcuts as possible. I'm more than happy for you to pronounce it that way. So as long as you can pronounce it correctly, that's what matters.
Okay, I got it. Jazakallah.
That's right. Any more questions on the previous section before we move into mad? Oh, yes. All good?
All good for me.
Yalla, bismillah. I'll try to quickly browse through this because I want to leave at least half an hour for questions and answers. We'll go up a bit. Okay. Qalqala. Anybody care to explain to me what qalqala is?
The echo sound, like a rebound.
Yes. Yeah, rebound.
It's like bouncing, yeah.
Yes. Yep, echoing sound. That's actually a good way of explaining it. I can't find a substitute word for English. So what's an example of qalqala? Yes. Anyone can think of an example?
Ahad.
Abi lahab wahab.
Yes. We said ahad. Actually, a good question. So how does the echo, mashallah, you said what the echo sounds like, but does it sound like a haraka or is it just an echo?
It should be a echo. If it becomes more like a haraka, then something's wrong, I think.
Okay, that's a good point. Anybody else care to add to that?
It depends on the strength of the qalqala, but it's never going to become a fatha.
That's a valid point. That's a good point as well. Can't be a fatha. Anybody like to add to it? Yes, got that as well. Okay. Actually, anybody know what's the point of qalqala? Why do we have qalqala?
No idea.
Good point. Okay. Imam Jazari work, he refers to, when it comes to Arabic speech, says Shadiduha ajid qatm bakat. So Shadiduha means the letters of the shidda or the strength are ajid qatm bakat. From that we get qutub jad, qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal as the qalqala letters. So these letters are so strong that when you stop on them or have a sukoon, it's hard to not let go of an echo. So I'll give you an exercise. So try to say in your own, try muting it and repeat backwards and forwards to yourself. Say haq, haq, and hold your breath at the qaf, right at the end. Say haq, haq, Okay, alhamdulillah. Now we'll try something different. Say it to something else. Say it as حق. حق. Quick question now, open discussion. What feels more natural to you?
Definitely the second one.
Yeah, the second one, yeah.
Why does it feel natural, actually? This is a technical question. Mashallah, everybody unanimously picks the second one. Why do you think it's the second one?
Because it's difficult to stop the air after this strong collision
Yes.
of our.
Exactly, Jazakallah khair. Because it's a strong letter, min huruf al-shidda, as we say. You need to let out some of the air in order to release it. So hence why we have hukm al-qalqala. Every time you get one of those letters and it is a sukoon, you let a little bit of it out. All good. That's basically qalqala. Any questions?
Just a comment on the kalkala. I think it was a good exercise. I just noticed how the very back of the tongue is touching the palate, so it's very hard to
Yes.
keep it up there. It's like a very hard job. So I think it needs to come down.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Like mashallah, it's like it was meant to be easily pronounced. So it's qalqala provides you could say in mechanical engineering terms, probably a mechanical release valve when it comes to actually relieving the stress on your throat or the back of the hanak, as we say. That's good. Alhamdulillah, that's basically qalqala. I'll go a bit down. I'll try to finish off inshallah with mad. Forget about ghunna, we mentioned it. Huruf al-lin, I'll combine it roughly with mad. Question. Can you please explain to me what mad is and what are huruf al-mad? This is open to anybody.
Isn't it elongation?
By the way, sorry.
I mean, using the mud, we elongate a sound. Prolong.
Yes, elongate.
Yeah.
Yes, long sound. Anybody else like to add?
Can we say it's more like the vowel sounds that has to be naturally elongated?
Yes. Anybody care to add which ones they are?
Alif, waw, yeah.
Yes, we got alif, waw, yeah. Okay, and does anybody like to explain a bit more what the hukum is? What's the ruling on the hukum? Is it compulsory or is it optional?
Feels like compulsory, because otherwise it would seem like there is no alif or waw or ya there.
Okay, that's basically it. Anybody else like to add? I'll go compulsory as well. So you're saying all of it is compulsory. That's the question I'm trying to get at. Is all of it compulsory or are there categories?
I think that there is a certain amount of time that is compulsory, and there is a longer amount of time you can hold them that becomes like mustahab. Is that right?
Okay, that's a good point. So you're saying there's mustahab as well. Mashallah, that's actually a good point. Yes, that's also one correct way of looking at it. Anybody else like to throw one more thing? No more suggestions? Okay. Inshallah. So I'll briefly explain it. Mad are natural, or they refer to as English as vowel letters. These letters naturally are prolonged. There are certain specific circumstances where you want to pronounce it a bit longer. So one question, how do you measure mad actually? Anybody know?
Do
No
you
idea.
measure it by the letter that comes after the mud?
Okay. Yes, so you're saying by the letter that comes after. Technically, that's how you figure out what type of mud you're doing. So that's a valid point. I'm referring specifically in units of measurement. How do you know how long the mud should be in that case?
One thing I think I learned from my brother, not sure it's right or wrong, was that how much you spend on one haraka, like fatha, and the amount you spend on one fatha, you
Yeah.
just roll your finger out in that speed, and you keep that as a baseline. That if you
Yes.
want to make do two, then you take 2 fingers out, something like that.
Yes, I see what you mean. So basically saying it's you're using the smallest unit measurement, which is the time it takes to say a haraka, and you're measuring using the fingers. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Yep. Anybody, any person else has a different opinion or a measurement style? Any person? That's it. So Muhammad. Okay. So I'll explain it really briefly. The measurements of the harakat, I can say historically, the measurements with the fingers, I'm personally not against. I wouldn't encourage it if you're starting off in order if you want to figure out what type of mad you're saying or the length. By all means, use your fingers. It's a new technique that came about. New, I'm saying, is about maybe 100, 200 years. I don't know exactly how roughly, but new way that was invented. Like I said, this is someone's way of measuring things. That's not how it was done the old way, so to speak. But subhanallah, if I find if it keeps you, mashallah, as you said, brother, if it gets you to measure the consistency of the mad, that's what I'm looking after. Because at different speeds, the speed of your fingers changes. I'll give you an example. Muhammad, let's think about it. Oh yeah, first question, before getting back to the point, before I get sidetracked, when it comes to mad is both, in specific cases, compulsory and optional, in the style of Hafs and Asim, which is the style we'll be teaching, inshallah, the riwayah. So what do I mean by compulsory and non-compulsory? There are certain places in the Quran where you have to specifically say the mad, and it has to be a specific length. And you hear me saying harakat quite a lot. So if you're 2, 4, 6, so what does 2, 4, 6 mean? 2 means you do 2 like this with your fingers. 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 count, and the other one is 6. All compulsory mads in our style are about 5 or 6. I'll explain why in a sec. Question: can anybody tell me an example of a compulsory mad?
Could it be
Any volunteers?
could it be-
Everybody.
sorry.
Yes.
Could it be the haruf
Go ahead.
muqatta, the beginning of some of the chapters?
Not all of them, because some of them, have mad on them, and some of them don't. Like, for example, Surat Maryam. You've got kaf, it has a mad on it, and then you say ha ya ayn. That's pronounced naturally. Or example, you can think of Surat Yusuf, alif lam, and then you say ra. You don't say ra. So some huruf muqatta'a have it, it's compulsory, but others don't. But what's an example of a compulsory mad that's 6 harakat? Anybody else like that?
Is it فإذا جاءت الطامة الكبرى?
Yes, definitely, that's one. Another one that's more obvious. You're all
ولا
going to laugh when you
الضالين.
figure it out. Yes, thank you. I was waiting for that one. But الضالين, yes, it's a compulsory. When you say it, غير المغضوب عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Yes. Now, question. When it comes to compulsory mad, with the exception of huruf muqatta'a, what's the biggest sign for a mad that has to be said? What's the biggest shortcut? Inshallah, brother Muhammad already mentioned a hint.
I think the letter before that, the letter with the mud, before that, the letter has a haraka. if you know what I mean.
Yes, you're saying the one before it has a haraka. That's one type of mad. I do agree with that. We'll get back to that inshallah. But specifically with compulsory mad, what should you be looking for as the biggest hint?
Shadda.
Shadda, yes, and it comes where exactly?
Like after the mad, like after the alif,
Yes,
or after
exactly.
the harf al-lin, like I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so immediately after the mad or the squiggly sign you see, people sometimes call it the wave or eyebrow, I don't care what you call it. But after the mad, exactly you see a shadda. Another example. ولا الله. There's a shadda on the lam over there. So every time you see a shadda after that mad haraka, you have to say it 6 and count 6 on your fingers. That's compulsory mad. The next one, I heard this mentioned on the video as well. We had look for the letter after. Specifically, what are you looking for after other than a shadda?
There's an alif.
Alif is correct. I'm looking for something that, yes, the Hamza, that's the one. Yep, Hamza. Was that Hamza as well, I heard?
Yes, I did Hamza.
Yep, alhamdulillah. So basically, now we said the compulsory 6 harakat mad has to have a shadda. We're all in agreement on that. The next one is 4 harakat long. And we said it has to have a Hamza. Does anybody have an example of a 4 harakat mad they can think of? Everybody, mashallah, is going through the Qur'an in their head at the moment.
والسماء والطارق.
Perfect. Jazakallah khair. والسماء. Perfect 4 harakat. Got a Hamza at the end. Sama is definitely one of them. Anybody think of another example?
جاء المعذرون.
Yes. وجاء المعذرون. Another one?
لا أعبد.
Yes. لا أعبد. Now, I'll pause right there. That's a really good point. We said والسماء وجاء and then ولا لا أعبد. Okay. Which mad here, there are 4 harakat long, like we said, yeah? Which is, in your opinion, and this is an open to group discussion, which is the odd one out?
لا أعبد.
لا أعبد. But that's interesting because we said the 4 harakat long. Why did you put la out of all of them? Oh, sorry, you're there? Oh, sorry, you're there?
Are you talking to me?
Oh, no, just because I heard, it was pointed out la was the odd one out. I just wanted to know why did you choose, why do we choose la?
I think that was struggling.
Yeah, I'm still just thinking why. I don't know. Maybe because it's an alif and not a mad. I don't know. I'm trying to think, but I don't know.
You're nearly there, but la basically is, as you know, as we say in Arabic, la is la. It's just one letter, صح?
Yes.
So there is no alif.
Yeah.
But you said it 4 harakat. You said the right answer. I'm not picking on you. Don't get me wrong. We're saying it exactly. All of them are 4 harakat long. But what makes the la different from the other ones? You could get some. Think of it from an Arabic sense, linguistically. What's different about la and the other ones? I'll say it again. So we said أنزل علينا من السماء مائدة. That's one example. Another example. إذا جاءك المنافقون قالوا. That's جاء. And then the third example. لا أعبد ما تعبدون. So I'm trying to illustrate not just the letter that's coming after it. So I'm giving you the whole part of the sentence. What makes la different from the other ones?
Because the hamza was in another word and not in the middle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. That is spot on. So basically, we call this in Arabic or Tajweed. If the mad is within the same word, that is mad muttasil. Muttasil means connected mad. A typical example, it's basically part of the same word. You cannot ignore it. For example, al-malaika. Another example. هؤلاء. That's mad muttasil or connected mad. And muttasil means disconnected. What that means is the mad that doesn't happen inside the word, it happens between words. For example, لا أعبد in Arabic is I do not worship. Two different words, but the next word has a hamza on it. So in order to preserve the nature of the mad, you'll say لا أعبد. But if you happen to stop on la, I'm not talking about this, don't get me wrong, I'm referring to examples of context. I'm not saying about this surah. If you stop at la, then you say as la. Then you say wakila. That's how normally you'd stop at it. But if you have a alif coming afterwards, you'll say it because that's what we refer to as a disconnected mad. So a big good question. Are they all compulsory? The munfasil and the muttasil, or are they options? Mad al-lazim, 6 harakat, we said is compulsory, you can't negotiate. But what's the hukum for the connected mad that's within one word and the hukum for the disconnected mad?
Papa.
Go ahead, bro. Yeah, I'm listening. You go ahead. So what's the hukum of the mad? Come on, mate. I know they do it in Mount Roskill. I was there. We've competed against these guys back in the day, so don't feel shy for not saying it.
Can you please repeat the question?
So we said there's a mad that's within the word, and there is a mad that's outside of the word. So are they both compulsory? Are they both optional? Or is one compulsory or what is it?
I think that one's compulsory and then one's optional.
Which ones are you referring to?
One which is in the word is optional, and then the other one is compulsory.
Ooh, good point. Okay. SubhanAllah, you're spot on, but you got it the other way around. So if it's a mad inside the word, it's compulsory. For example, malaika or haula. The reason being is that to preserve the not just the rhythm, but inside of the word as well, we make it as compulsory. Anything between is optional. The best example of reciters you hear Mashayikh saying this, Al-Haram al-Makki. You might hear Imam Sudais, Imam Shaim. They'll only focus on these ones, but they won't say all of them. The other one, in anzalnahu. This one is specifically from Al-Jazariya, or the school that we're learning from, is optional. However, you can say all of them. So you've got an option now. This is I'm giving this option to you as students when you're starting this course. Some people say, look, I don't have the breath. I'll just say the compulsory mad and get it over and done with. I'm like, okay, as long as you say the mad that's within the word, I'm happy with that. Don't say anything extra. Some people say, look, I'm going to get too confused. I want to say every single mad that's there on the mushaf. It's easier for me that way, and I lean towards that one. Not because you know, I'm encouraging you to, because mashallah, what I'm trying to demonstrate to you here is mashallah in Hafs we have options. And this one is the option and discretion of the own student. So you can either say all the mads, or you could decide to focus on the compulsory mad, which is a 6 harakat, and the mad muntasif. However, this is a big disclaimer. What you cannot do is one lesson you'll say all of the mads, and the next lesson you start dropping things. That's when it starts getting confusing. So I advise you to strictly adhere to the correct style of or tariqah of reciting it, as we used to say. Okay, I'll probably stop here for the time being. Any more questions, or we just covered and mad?
No, thank you so much. I would like to just make a brief comment that this rule of mud was so helpful, because I used to listen to different qari on YouTube, and I was always wondering, there's a mud here. I don't know why they didn't do it. So, but now it becomes more clear. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Ajma'in. Any more discussion? Forget about the questions. Any discussions? Anything anybody like to add? Basically, the mad thing here is obviously there's different tariqas, or like you could say lineages from the silsila when it comes to look at it. Imam Shatibi, mashallah, used to say all of them. Imam al-Jazari came and completed the work of Imam Shatibi, and he said, okay, this is the optional and this is the non-optional. So just to actually elaborate more on what was already researched and be more accommodating of different styles. So that's when it comes to options in our recitation mad. On a basic level, that's basically the options that you have. One more comment, just to add before we kind of wrap up the things on that. You've seen there something about mad tabi'i and the waw and the ya. I'll give you a brief example. You might hear some people say when they recite, some people refer to it as mad lin or aad al-sukun. I'm not going to get into the technicality of it, but this is what it sounds like. Basically, you might hear say people, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Some people say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Others might say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. What I'm trying to say is that the waw and the ya are naturally, like we said, the mad letters. There's a mad that sometimes naturally happens at the end of the surah. Again, this is another optional mad. What I advise people to do is that it's either 2 harakat, 4 harakat, or 6 harakat. But whatever you choose, every single ayah, if it has a waw or ya, has to finish with the same consistent level of consistency. For example, you can't say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. That doesn't sound natural. The reason why I say this is I want you to get your recitation up to scratch from the start. The only people I see that are willing to bend these rules are people that are actually more into the Qur'an for the natural, you could say, musical sounds as opposed to ahkam tajweed. They'll just make mad of whatever they like, and they'll just shorten whatever they don't like. Don't fall in that trap really early on. Focus on it, really make it as simple as possible. I advise people do it 2 harakat. It's easier that way. It's quick and it's natural. So that's basically my last comment. That's a brief crash course with all the basic ahkam. Any questions from anybody else? Anything you'd like to add? How would you like us to go ahead with the class moving forward? Alhamdulillah, I think I've done as much theory as I can for 2 hours. This is an open invitation to everybody, by the way, because next lesson, inshallah, is going to be really practical. We're just going to start with the mushaf from the ground up and hit it running.
Akhi Kareem, I'm not sure if now's the right time to ask this question, but how will the classes kind of be run? Is it, you know, time? Is it going to be timings that we come in, and how do we progress, and you know, the sort of marking system and stuff, or is that something that might be sent by correspondence by email later?
Actually, that's a really good question because it's perfectly valid. It's we're trying to outline what we are trying to achieve as part of this course for this lesson and the lessons moving forward. Alhamdulillah, I've just given you a brief rundown of the theory. As we progress, obviously, and we actually have concrete examples to work with, we'll be able to provide specifically tailored feedback on the context. Because as you can see, talking about Ibhar is one thing, but expressing it in a specific context is another thing. So what we will be doing is that Tajweed is a really practical art. We'll be sitting down in a halaqa setting. Each person will be taking turns reciting. And for me, I prefer a halaqa setting because two reasons. First of all, you get to benefit from your style of recitation or recitation of others. So for example, let's just say so-and-so reads it correctly. At least you get to see, for example, I should have read it this way. And mashallah, I find it's a nice way of cross-pollinating ideas. Secondly, ijaza is a practical qualification. You know, like the example I gave yesterday, I was sitting down for an hour straight reading 18 pages. The only time I was breaking out of context from the sheikh is to actually get feedback on either the mutashabihat or specific mistakes I needed to correct on. But other than that, I was reading non-stop. So what I'm trying to say is that inshallah, we'll be incrementally helping you go ahead with this. I'm not going to provide any specific written feedback unless I necessarily have to, although I haven't done in the past, because usually I provide instant feedback because that's how it works, either inside or outside of ijaza. Any questions? Sorry, I heard a voice.
Sorry, that was my son. I had left the mute off. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all right. It's all good. So what I'm trying to say is that you're going to find there is no need to have feedback coming later because you get it instantaneously. When you'll be reciting the Fatiha, I'll say, okay, for example, repeat this, say it this way, do whatever. So you'll find out on the spot, your level of progression. I hope I've clarified that question.
Abundantly, Akhi. Shukran.
No, Jermaine.
Think
yeah, go ahead.
I think brother Ibrahim, I'll be working with brother Ibrahim to sort out if we want to have 2 badges, like 5 in each halaqah, as you mentioned, maybe depending on how much time you can give to each one, and then I can roll out the days and everything with every participant.
Yeah, inshallah. So it depends on the class size. I am aware not everybody is going to show up. I think probably the maximum we'll keep it to is maybe 7 per halaqah. That way everyone gets a good turn, And my best advice is don't stress if you're not really reading good or you're making mistakes and whatnot. I used to make 25, 20 mistakes per page, like I told you in the last lecture when I first started. And the great ulama before us, the Qur'an, subhanAllah, used to learn 10 ayat at a time. So, like I said, it's not like we've got a goal to reach by a certain point or an expectation. Take it easy and roll with it and enjoy the journey. Forget about questions. Any suggestions? All good.
I would just
So I'm good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, bro. It's all good.
I just suggest to the other students and to myself not to forget the adab with the teacher, to make dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you, Akhi. Thank you for your time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you for your sins, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us students worthy of this content.
Jazakallah khair. I mean, likewise, all applies to us. And like I said, in terms of adab, don't give me subhanAllah as subhanAllah, it's a good question. Sorry, bro. I'll get back to your point, brother. Are we going to memorize Quran this course? That's really good. And when it comes to memorization, my best advice, at this stage, memorize at your own pace. In my personal opinion, everybody should have their own goal to memorize at one point. I'll get back to that later. But yeah, memorization is to be done outside, inshallah. Just here, we're just going to focus on the correct recitation. That way you memorize correctly, especially incorrectly. And yeah, best advice I have to you as students, subhanAllah, Rasul used to say to Sahaba, don't do to me as it happened to Sayyidina Isa, and his followers put him up on a certain pedestal. And like I said, I'm still a student, I'm still completing my ijazah. Like I said, this is a long road. When I say it's a long road, is that people change over time. You'll be surprised. I know a few Qur'a, men and women, that subhanAllah have fallen off the cliff after they came. You'll be surprised, and as long as make dua that Allah gives us istiqamah and the sabr to stay on the right path, inshallah. So, any more questions? Anybody like suggestions, questions, anything else?
So I just have a question about the chart that we are seeing right now. So the lam, the ra rules, and the stopping signs. So we'll do it as we proceed with the next sessions while doing the mushaf.
Yeah, inshallah. It's like I've combined the lam and jalala and the ra with the sifat. The stops, I think, is going to be easier demonstrated, I think, in my personal opinion. Sorry. It's going to be demonstrated better when we get an ayah. So I can tell you, for example, this one here, you stop on it. This one here is preferred to carry on. This one here doesn't have a stop. What do you do when there is no stop? Where to stop correctly? Inshallah is going to be a practical one. So, just a question. Anyone else would like to add?
I have
just want to, yeah.
I've been having some doubts about certain rules that I'm not aware of. I don't know whether it will be covered in the future. One of them is
Oh, sure.
one of them is when an ayah ends, whether you stop it with a sukoon sound or another way. I don't know how to tell that logically. I don't so I don't think I've grasped it. So for example, like after I listen to the recitation, of course, then I know, but if I were to, recite something that's very unfamiliar to me, then I get stuck. So for example, like, Surah Tariq is quite easy, but if
Sure.
you look at all the last letters of the ayahs, they're different. It's either Fatha, Dhamma, Kasra, and so I get confused
Yes.
with that. What is the logic behind it, and like, is that a rule?
So that's actually a good point. So you're saying basically why, if we're going to stop on a sukoon, if there's always a sukoon when we stop, why is there haraka anyway? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, but more than that. So
So like what's the point of
or rather, how to end ayahs?
Yes. Okay, that's actually a good point.
I don't know what to call it, but that's my problem. I don't know.
Yes.
When it's a new
Yeah.
surah, I don't know how to end it unless I listen to somebody.
I see what you mean. So I'll just give you a general rule. Mashallah, what you said is actually a really valid example. Give you an example of somebody of a surah that we can relate to. Surah Nas, for example. Now everyone says, how should I finish the verse? Should it be a kasra, fatha, dhamma? So I hear some people say, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. People say, okay, so what's the point of the kasra if I'm saying a sukoon on it? So I'd like to open the floor. How would you normally finish the end of the surah? This is the other Qur'an as well.
Well, if it's continuous, if you join two ayat, then you read the haraka. But if you stop, then you do a sukun. If there is tanween, then you say a mad, I think. And then if it's continuous, then you say the tanween. That's what I know.
Yes, I'll give you an example. So going to Nas, you got the wasl and qata', as we call it in Arabic. Wasl is connection, qata' is stopping. So for example, you can say قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس. That's one style, which is pretty much stopping at every single ayah. And I'm putting a sukoon on because Arabs and the hukum is you make a sukoon of the last letter when you stop. That's how it normally works. However, if you're connecting, you have to say every single harak. So you might hear the style, we refer to it as hadd, which is the quicker style of recitation. You'll hear it a lot in Tarawih sometimes in certain masjids, especially when you're listening to Tahajjud. People will say, قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس. So here, there's a different hukum. So what I'd like to say to explain and summarize what we just said is that mashallah was summarized really well. If you stop, try to make it a sukoon. It has to be a sukoon. Sorry. If you continue, you always say the haraka because you not only are you linking the letter, you're linking the haraka as well. And that doesn't just apply to pronouncing the correct haraka on the stop at the start. Any tajweed that is on that last letter gets carried to the next one. Does that make sense? Or do I need to explain myself?
What you're saying makes sense, but unfortunately that was not my question. It's very hard to
Sure.
visualize. I'm trying to I'll inshallah get hold of a surah in Surah Nas, like everything finishes with the kasra.
Yes.
Which is easy. And if you take something like Surah At-Tariq,
yep. Yep, I've got Surah
I
At-Tariq.
think I need to find a better example where I am really confused, and I'll let you know next time, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that I'll get another surah where I'm really confused. Surah Tariq is also very familiar to me, so I'll get hold of another surah where or at least a couple of ayahs where I get stuck, and I'll let you know what exactly is the problem I'm facing.
No, perfect. No, Jazakallah khair. No, definitely. Feel free to bring them. Yeah, and this is an open invitation to anybody. Any problems that you see as well, obviously, for putting forward to this class, I'll try to address them. And supposedly, if I can't sort it, I'll get the big mashayikh involved. Don't stress about it. Inshallah. All good. Any more questions? Inshallah, next lesson, everybody's going to be on guard and they're all going to be reciting. That is main. Well, inshallah, everybody's going to be reciting for the next one. So you're not going to be hearing my voice. So that's going to be the plan in case anybody else had something else in mind. So
can I add one more thing, please?
Sure.
So the 5th ayah of Surah Tariq.
Yep.
Which is فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانَ مِمَّا خُلِقَ. Now it stops with خُلِقَ and I don't know what to do. That's my problem.
Now this one, yeah. So based on what we said earlier, every letter you always finish with a sukoon. It has a fatha. Yes, exactly. If it's got a fatha, if it's got a dhamma, if it's got a kasra, you disregard it and you just say khuliqa.
Okay, so then the following ayah as well,
Yeah.
It's again, it's going to be dafiq
دافق.
or
Yes.
dafiq ki if you want to connect it. But if you don't want to connect it, it's going to be dafiq. Is it?
Exactly. But
Okay.
as we mentioned, as we mentioned earlier with the exercise with the kha, we said you don't say dafiq because you're holding your breath. You have to make a qalqala as well.
Yes.
So what
yes.
happens? Exactly. So we took out the last letter, everything becomes a sukoon, but because it's become a sukoon, automatically has to have a qalqa on it. This is, I'm not going to go to the level of the qalqala. I'm going to leave that for the later on class to explain the different types of qalqala. But yes, so what happens is everything finishes. If it stops on a sukoon, then you have to be, first thing I'd advise everybody to look for is it one from the huruf al-qalqala. So just bear that in mind. Jazakumullah khair. Good point. When is the next class? Inshallah, we'll try to aim for Friday, inshallah. At the moment, brother Asfar, how many people do we have in this session?
So we had initially about 11, 12 people, actually 12 people. So few of them couldn't make it because they were outside. So they said they'll see the recording. One sister had a family issue and she went as well. So yes, total I think
Mhm.
maybe about 12 people. I've compiled their attendance, so I will send you through so you have an idea who are
Inshallah.
going to be joining, and we can then segregate. You can either in the next session you can have a small portion for everyone to read, and you can then divide them into groups, and you can do that like that as well if you like.
Okay, not a problem. My best advice then in this case to everybody is if you got your mushafs, what we can do, I'm going to send out the verse to everybody. And this has basically 95% of the ahkam we just mentioned. It's one ayat, about 3 to 4 lines long. And let me find Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, Surah Al-Ma'idah. So if you can open your mushaf for Surah Al-Ma'idah and point towards, here we go, Ayah 95. So what I'll do, sorry, I'm not going to go too much overtime, but I'm just going to record this for everybody. If you want to listen to something, this is to save you going up and trying to find which sheikh is reading what. This is going to be what we're going to recite for the next lesson. Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ayah 95. This has about 95% of what we just covered today. Bismillah ar-Rahman. I'll just read it very quickly. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقتلوا الصيد وأنتم حرم ومن قتله منكم متعمدا فجزاء مثل ما قتل من النعم يحكم به ذوى عدل منكم هديا بالغ الكعبة أو كفارة طعام مساكين أو عدل ذلك صياما ليذوق وبال أمره عفى الله عما سلف ومن عاد فينتقم الله منه والله عزيز ذو انتقام. Jazakumullah khair. So that's pretty much going to be the homework for next lesson. And we're going to cover the explanation of this verse, inshallah. We're going to read it together as a class and explain each hukum in detail, inshallah, from the stuff that he covered. So actually, he's got a practical background.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Ibrahim. Inshallah, I will stop the recording after this, and I will upload it in the YouTube channel for Otago Quran Study Club, and everyone can view that as well. Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair, Ajma'in. Inshallah, looking forward to seeing you hopefully this Friday.
Inshallah. So next session you're saying is going to be on Friday or Sunday?
Inshallah, I'll try to figure out the attendance. Obviously, if it's at the end of the day, if it's more than 7 are planning to come, I'll have to we'll have to make an arrangement somehow. So because there's always going to be people dropping out, so we'll make it next Friday, and inshallah we'll take it from there. Then we'll figure out how many streams and who's going to be in what. So this is going to depend on I think this verse.
Okay, inshallah. So next Friday, 6 p.m. is going to be when everyone's going to give their own this ayah recitation.
Yeah, we're going to read it together as a class, and then obviously we'll be able to cover each hukum in detail. So
Sure.
that way you can actually apply everything that you covered in today's class. It's going to make a lot more sense being practically involved in it and building it from scratch as opposed to me just talking to you. So I'll be just the coach. I'll be just giving back.
Okay, that's great. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much.
Ajma'in, Jazakumullah khair. Really appreciate you all for turning up, and yeah, keep up the good work. If you have any questions, please forward them to Brother Far, and we'll try to get it sorted before next session.
I would like to thank everyone for attending today's session as well. Jazakallah khair. And yes, as Brother Ibrahim also mentioned, that if there are any questions or suggestions or comments, please do let me know. I'll send an email asking for confirmation for those who can attend next Friday's 6 p.m. session. So please do confirm so that we know how many people will be attending, inshallah. Jazakallah khair once again. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Ajma'in. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.